7th, almost at the end of February 2019. And we are several years, a lot of years actually, after we should have ended cannabis prohibition. And we haven't. We have a long way to go, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But let me introduce myself. I'm hoping that we have a lot of new listeners today and that have never been to this show and don't know anything about A Cup of Joe and don't know anything about the Human Solution. And so let me bring y'all up to speed. So this is a podcast called A Cup of Joe, and I happen to be a Joe. I'm a bit of a freedom fighter, and I'm also the CEO of a little nonprofit, actually a medium-sized nonprofit that is dedicated to creating a world where people don't get locked up for a plant anymore. We're a civil rights 501c3 federally recognized nonprofit, have been for, I think we're going into our 5th year now. We've been an organization for 10 years, or into our 10th year right now. And we advocate for cannabis defendants, prisoners, and people who have been negatively affected by the war on drugs as our primary call. But we're a civil rights group, and we have broadened our mission to include disabled rights and veterans' rights and Native American rights at this point. I'm hoping one day that we have finished the job with cannabis and we've ended the prohibition and we can actually, get on to some other things. So this show is a podcast, which means it's not a broadcast, which means if you're picking it up, you're either listening on your phone, which means you picked up the phone and you dialed 646-929-2495. And if you want to share your thoughts, your ideas, I welcome you to call in and join the show. One of the reasons that I think this show is valuable is because of the participation of folks. And we have literally people from all over the country that listen and call in other parts of the world as well. It's shown as a live stream on Facebook, and as much as anybody knows, I'm not a fan of Facebook or social media. It is there. And it's also being live streamed right now on YouTube, and it is today being streamed on my Joe Grumbine channel. I'm not that bright when it comes to technical things sometimes, so I haven't figured out yet how to sync everything up to where it'll be posting from the Human Solution page, but we're getting there. I'm about to post the YouTube stream onto my Facebook page. So you can listen on Blog Talk Radio straight off of the site, and I know that link has been shared around social media. You can watch it and or listen on Facebook, and you can also watch and listen on YouTube. So right now we've got a few folks up on YouTube, and I want to say hey to everybody, and I'm glad you found it. Last week we changed things up a little bit. I did a live show from Philadelphia on Tuesday, and we did a rerun on Wednesday. So if you're following along, we'll give you where to go and what to do. And if you're not, hopefully enough people will be sharing the information around and making it easy to find. So what do we do? I keep getting this question. Well, what do you guys do? What do you do? And I think it's a big question. And for a lot of people that have been part of the organization, it can seem to be a hard answer because we do so many things, or we have done so many things. But really, if you can boil it down, we advocate, we educate, and we support. Those are the three primary things that we do, and we do it with purpose. And our purpose is not to pass some legalization bill or some medical bill. Our purpose is liberty and freedom. And these are things that are fundamental to, in my opinion, our hope, our hope as a race. You know, it's a funny thing that if you've never tasted freedom, you probably don't cherish it. But if you have tasted it, you probably don't want to give it up. And, you know, we live in a world where historically people have oppressed each other ruthlessly in every way they could since time began. And people have enslaved each other, and they have swindled each other, and they have taken advantage of each other, and they have raped each other and stolen from each other, and all of these things in every possible way you could imagine, and in ways you couldn't imagine. And in really the most recent of history, we've decided in some small part, in some small places, that it doesn't have to be that way, and that we're all the same. Fundamentally, at our core, remove the skin and the wrappings and the trappings, and, you know, boil it down to a spirit and a heart. And I don't know that you'd be able to tell the difference. So you probably could. Some are probably different colors, but, you know, as far as brightness and vibrational whatever. But at the end of the day, we all have the potential to be the same, and there isn't anything that should inhibit that, and especially not with our basic fundamental rights, our basic civil liberties, our basic human rights. And those rights get encroached on and infringed on by our own governments ruthlessly. And I think, you know, that's a conversation that maybe we should start having more of. You know, why aren't we doing something about that? But we'll talk about it more. This has been traditionally a 2-hour show. And I recently had an incident that kind of knocked a little, hopefully some sense into me, but a little wake-up call. And I conked my head pretty hard, and I got a taste of a moment of what would happen if everything got dramatically different. And I think we live in a world of comfort for the most part, even if it doesn't seem like it. So much so that we don't really think about survival, really, unless something dramatic happens. Somebody gets a serious illness or an injury, or somebody gets arrested, or oh, it was my concrete step. It wasn't a person. And I don't know who got the better of each other. I think I might have cracked it. Anyways, at the end of the day, when you have one of those moments, a wake-up call, if you will, you realize most of us spend a lot of time with things that are maybe not as important as they could and should be. We waste a lot of time. And I think that life is too short for that. And so I want to give an opportunity for this show to be 2 hours, but I'm going to give it 1 hour. And if it rises up and is more than that, we'll give it a place to be that. So we're going to start that next week. We're going to probably do 2 hours this week. We'll see how we're doing. As always, there's a lot to talk about, though. And I want to talk about our purpose. You know, we advocate, we educate, we support. We have a goal of ending prohibition. But what are we doing? You know, what are we doing? I have a team of people I've been working with for 10 years, and I watched that team ebb and flow and come and go, and people come in and they're all hot and heavy, and usually it's right after something happened to them or somehow they're personally affected. But what I found is that generally we're the problem. You know, we're also the solution, but generally we're our biggest problem. People get upset at the silliest things. They find every reason to lose their interest, lose their focus, lose their drive, lose their creativity, find reasons to not participate. We are the stereotypical stoner more often than not. You know, when was the last time one of us got out there and just nailed it? You know, I don't know how many people I work with and they're like, oh, forgot, oh, misspelled, oh, you know, for whatever reason. And we, you know, we're so kind and gracious to each other. We don't hold ourselves any higher than that. We don't give ourselves the credit for being better than that. And I'm in no way implying that cannabis makes you that way. I'm saying that we fit our own stereotype more than I wish we did. You know, we do court support as a primary function of our existence. And I've recently found some cases where the attorneys, even though they knew us and they knew what we were capable of, didn't want court support because some of the people engaged and involved were potential problems. And that was kind of a heartbreak to me. I was like, really? You know, I thought we were better than that. But it only takes one negative thing to screw up the whole deal. I use the sandcastle analogy all the time. And I think it's a really good one. You can spend all day, all week, all month building a beautiful, ornate, intricate sandcastle with every little detail. And it could be anything. It could be huge. It could be this amazing work of art. And one doofus can walk through and step on it and it's all gone. And that's how we are. That's how it is with our ego and our anger and our laziness and all of these combinations of things that keep us from accomplishing our goals. So I want to get back to basics a little bit. They talk about history and how, you know, we're destined to repeat history. I don't know that that's true. I think we evolve through our history. We hopefully grow past it, but there's elements of history that maybe we could and should repeat. I've been studying some historical figures lately, and you know, I've gone through and talked about a few of them. I'm reading a biography of Nelson Mandela right now, and I'm not all the way through it. I don't know all of his whole story yet, but you know, he's an influential figure, one of the, you know, key figures in modern freedom fighting. And one thing I noticed about his story thus far, and I'm about halfway through it, I think, is that he wasn't out there trying to be a rock star. He wasn't out there trying to, you know, network and hubbub and get a big name for things. He just did what he knew was right, and he worked. He worked vigilantly and diligently, and he overcame obstacles constantly. And he took risks, took huge risks. And in fact, at this point in the civil rights era, and especially, well, not especially there, but in all different places, it was commonplace for the people that were fighting for their freedom to push it to where they would get exposed, to where their cases would be told widespread to bring attention to them. They would go out of their way to get jailed and locked up and fight a case. They did it on purpose, and they did it with pride, and they did it with focus and intent. And nowadays, everybody takes a plea deal, anything to avoid taking a stand. And I wonder about that and where that's going to take us. Another thing I noticed about him was he went and got training. He went through the military at one point to a purpose and was trained. And he operated with purpose and with a training. And he was battle tested. You know, he went through hardship after hardship, and he He was resilient, and he kept coming back and coming back. I don't know how many times I hear people constantly, and they have something happen and they can't make it. Something happened. Oh, I was this, I was that, whatever. Somebody died, somebody got sick, somebody got hurt, somebody whatever, or this thing happened and I can't participate anymore. And nowadays it's kind of the commonplace. And I just can't help but think, what if we were just to suck it up and keep going? What if we were to stay the course, even if we didn't like that guy sitting next to us? What if we were to actually get out there and start practicing training and make a plan and executing it? Because that's what we do when we're successful. That's what our enemies do constantly, and they're successful. I don't know. I just keep thinking maybe we could focus a little bit and learn. So I got this wake-up call, and it told me maybe I should reel it back a little bit and get a little more focused and spend a little bit more attention. So I want to do this. I don't really think that most people that participate in this show understand what we're trying to accomplish. And I want to maybe paint a picture to see what that looks like. You know, we talk about legalize it, and we talk about baby steps, and we talk about doing what we can. And I think to myself, where does that take us? It takes us to yet more work. But who's talking about the end game? What would that look like? So I want to do a little guided meditation or visualization, and it won't take too long, but I think it's important. So to everybody who's listening right now, if you would join me, take a minute, take a couple of deep breaths and close your eyes. And we all have a place that we can think about that makes us feel safe. I think fear is a big enemy, and I think if we could get past that fear, maybe we could think clearer and think better. So here's Craig. Well, Craig's calling from federal prison, so we're gonna bypass that for a minute, but I will get back to it before the show's over. Craig Cecil is calling from Terre Haute, Indiana, where he's currently serving a life sentence for pot in federal prison today in Indiana.
Hang up to decline the call or to accept.
Craig Cecil, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Joe. Hello from Federal Correctional in Terre Haute, Indiana.
Well, I been talking about you a lot lately. I met a couple of guys yesterday who were looking to do some business, and we're proposing some kind of a business venture, and both of them had done federal time. One of them was for cannabis and one of them was for another drug, but one had done 10 years and one had done 12 years. And they knew of a bunch of our sort of, more known cannabis prisoners. A lot of guys that get into the federal system get moved around a bit. And so, it's you get an experience in that sort of unique environment, and they hadn't heard of you. So I told your story, and they appreciated it in a way that a lot of people couldn't, because both of them had got caught up in conspiracy cases, and they know, what that's all about. So, that we're doing what we can on a regular basis to bring attention to the fact that this job's not done. And even though we're passing laws right and left, that unless we finish the job, we're not done. And last Tuesday, I was up in Philadelphia, and I was working with George Martorano, who, as you know, did 32 years on a life sentence. And we were talking about, we did a special edition of the show, and I didn't have the ability to let you know because it happened kind of fast. I would have been nice to have you call, but anyways, we were talking about the need. We would have to pass a law that would give a mechanism for all the prisoners to be able to get out, even though you have a change of circumstances. It doesn't necessarily mean that somebody who's locked up for these crimes that are no longer crimes just automatically get released. I don't think people realize that.
what a lot of people don't realize, even prisoners here, is if the feds, deschedulized marijuana altogether tomorrow, so they're completely out of regulating marijuana, that wouldn't affect my sentence at all.
Exactly.
Just like when they passed the, I forgot what amendment it was, but undoing the prohibition, nobody got out of prison. Everybody still remained in prison that had been already sentenced. What it did do, though, is stop the...
This call is from a federal prison.
It terminated the prosecutions of people that had not yet been sentenced, but for everybody in prison, they remained. But now in Michigan a few years ago, they changed their life sentences for drug laws. And although it couldn't reach retroactively to people already in prison, the governor of Michigan commuted a good deal of those sentences. So, I mean, that is a potential in the feds that if they schedule marijuana next week, I think that would be a good incentive for President Trump to commute a whole lot of marijuana sentences.
Yeah, it's interesting. There are mechanisms to let these people out, to let everybody out, but it doesn't necessarily have to happen that way. And I think that, without us putting the pressure on these elected officials all the way through, we're having some sentence reform, and we've made some progress, but unfortunately, unless it's done, it just keeps going. And in my opinion, if we leave anybody left behind, we leave a place for more people to sit next to them, regardless of what the state of the law is. They always seem to have a way around it when they want to.
And it usually has so many ifs and buts in it. For instance, the California law. Now, of course, they market recreational marijuana in California, and your one law in California actually allows people to expunge some old marijuana convictions, but not, the bulk of them. A lot of the distribution offenses and all that, your laws don't provide for them to, to get expunged off of their records. So,
well, what's
the punishment of those, is, having a felony.
What's interesting too is that in a lot of ways it's a Trojan horse, because people assume that because some things get expunged, you hear about it on the newspaper, in the news sometimes about, this governor is going to expunge all these records. But what they don't tell you, and I think this is really important, I bring it up often, generally what they expunge are simple possession charges. People don't realize how many people have picked up simple possession misdemeanors and felonies over the last 50, 60 years. And it's a low-hanging fruit. It's easy to say, yeah, we're expunging all these pot cases. But what they don't tell you is that when they really want to go after somebody, they don't go after them for simple possession. They go after them with intent to sell, sales, transportation, manufacturing, all these other things that they can hit you with. And generally speaking, those are not included in these legalization members or these legalization efforts. They don't generally, they're not generally all encompassing. So when they say, oh, it's now legal, what they don't mean is that anything you want to do is legal. They mean that very certain specific limited things are legal, and that's it. And I don't think people realize it.
And a lot of people don't realize it doesn't take much to be guilty of a distribution offense. A distribution offense just means that you transferred it either from or to another person. So, for instance, if you smoke a joint and hand it to a buddy to hit off of the joint, you just distributed marijuana.
Exactly.
Some of the charges are actually based on something that simple.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the conspiracy charges are the worst. I can remember hearing testimony. I think it was in Noah Kleinman's trial, but I heard it while I was at that trial from somebody. And there was a situation where there was a confidential informant that was trying to build a case, and he went to this guy and said, "Hey, I want you to get me some drugs." And he says, "Well, I can't get you any drugs." And then he says, "Well, if something changes, will you let me know?" And it was something so simple as like agreeing to possibly maybe do something for him. And they that was the essence of their case. And it was, you know, it was a foundless case, but on conspiracy, you have hearsay evidence as admissible, and you have, you know, it's a mind crime. It's an intent to do something, and it's ridiculous.
Yes, yes. Conspiracy is, as you say, it's an agreement between two or more people that a crime is to be committed. So if you and I agree that, boy, that guy sure needs the crud kicked out of him, we're actually guilty of conspiring to assault somebody.
Exactly.
Even though, we didn't carry it out. It's a terrible, in application, it's a terrible law.
Well, and, you know, it just sets up things like your scenario where a so-called crime that had no victim ends up with a guy serving a life term, which, you know, if you were to present that to any rational-minded person, you would think that they would say, wait a minute, that doesn't make sense, because frankly, it doesn't. But here it is, you know, you're many years into a sentence, and, you know, you've tried, as George has done and as so many people have done, you haven't just sat idly behind and said, well, okay, I guess I'm stuck here. You're exploring every possible option, and anytime something changes in the political landscape, you're out there. You know, we've been behind you from since we met, and yet, you know, for all intents and purposes, if nothing changes today, nothing's going to change.
And sadly, they're going to consider in a few weeks whether El Chapo ought to get the same sentence as me.
Yeah, go figure that one out. I know. That was another one that really got me. Well, he's probably going to get another trial, because they're possibly going to disqualify the jury because of stuff that happened. I don't know if it's going to go down or not, but they've been talking about it. But yeah, this guy who's responsible for literally thousands of murders and horrors in every way you could imagine, tortures and every possible victimful crime, and they've got him dead to rights, and now they're considering a life sentence. It's unbelievable.
And look at it, Manuel Noriega got a 20-year sentence.
Exactly. So, you know, I mean,
one good thing I do like, though, is that there's more and more of a public awareness of marijuana. Just today, Trixie Glore sent me a whole listing of all the states that have bills that are actually already called for a vote in 4 different states right now, including one that voted today. What is it, New Hampshire, to move forward on their recreational marijuana laws. And but so many states are looking so seriously at these, and moving them along in their systems, that it seems impossible for the feds to just ignore this and and make it a don't thing.
Well,
like our military did years ago.
You know what's happening as well, and it's also in my mind a little unsettling. Unfortunately, I'm in some ways I'm willing to put up with it for the reason that I can't do much about it, number one, and two, the good that comes of it, I'll take what I can get. But the fact that the big money and the big lawyers are getting engaged because they have a financial interest in it is pushing some of the big barriers aside. Unfortunately, it's also closing doors for the little guy and making it more difficult for the guy who can't compete in that kind of an arena. But in some it's war, and you take your victories where you can, and you try to turn even a rough spot into some positive game.
Oh yeah. I mean, part of our progress too is you gathering the awareness of so many people. Just today, our friend Dee Dee sent me a confirmation she got from Kamala Harris, who, as you know, is running for president. But she received the letter sent from, regarding the changes that need to be made to our drug laws that the Human Solution published, and that she put out. The Kamala Harris Senate office answered that, yes, we've accepted that. Yes, we're going to look into that.
Pretty cool.
Well, it's there's a core team of people, and Dee Dee is certainly part of that core that just keeps going.
Finally.
We finally built our core where even when some little drama happens and one person comes and goes and one person gets upset or whatever, we still got enough people that are plowing forward. And I feel confident that, we're on a course now to really take this home. And I wish I could get everybody to start jogging rather than walking, but at least we're walking towards the finish line. And I think that, we're gaining steam with it. We're bringing next week, I'm going to have a state senator who's a Native American who's going through some other issues that aren't necessarily cannabis related, but we're expanding our mission to include, veterans' rights and disabled rights and Native American rights as well. And there's already, sorry, Craig, I've gobbled up too much of your time. There's your first beep. I'm going to turn it back to you.
Okay, actually, that's the second beep, but just like Dee Dee got the attention of somebody that's in the middle of running for president and a busy senator, I mean, everybody can reach out. Everybody can get our people that are running for office and our people that are now in office to say it's time to do more than talk about marijuana.
It is. It is time to do more than talk about marijuana. Those are words to live by, and they were spoken by Craig Cecil. Craig Cecil is currently serving a life sentence in federal prison for pot, and first-time offender, and no victim. He's accused of fixing trucks that were used to smuggle cannabis, and yet he's serving a life sentence. And he mentioned Dee Dee's name. Dee Dee Kirkwood is a longtime member and just a lionheart of an advocate. And I've always talked about the power of one, and Dee Dee kind of exemplifies that, because she's kind of, as much as she's very supportive of the Human Solution and she's dyed in the wool, but she's been on her own mission to champion some of these prisoners and really just not just raising money, not just talking and not just going out on stages, but she's actually digging in behind the scenes and getting the work done. And I've never seen, I have seen examples, but Dee Dee is an example of the power of one, how one person can make such a difference. And I'm just, proud that we're part of her efforts and she's part of ours. All right. So we're burning up time, and I got a couple of guests on the line right now, and we have our featured guest, Elazar David Melendez, and he's waiting online, but we also have Steve Raley, and I told him he could talk, and he's got a case, a federal case, but it's not a criminal case. He's filing a suit against the federal government. And for a long time, we had Mike Harris, who filed a civil suit against the city of Fontana. And we watched that case go along, and he prevailed. And even though they decided not to appeal it, so it's not going to get some case law made, he changed the landscape, the political landscape in the city of Fontana, so that they cannot ban somebody from growing plants. And he created a template through this case for other people in other cities to do a similar thing. So, so many times in court, when we talk about court support, we're talking about a criminal case, or a family law case where somebody's lost their child. And people are fighting for their own freedom. But every once in a while, we take it to them. And I think that we should have overwhelming support when we do that. I think that's a time when we should be flooding the courtrooms. And I talked about before, we're our own worst enemy. You know, we're stereotypical stoners. And we're not all that way, and we're not all that way all the time. But my question is, why aren't the courtrooms flooded with people? And nobody has an answer for me. Not anybody. We're all too busy. We're all busy doing something or another. There's always a reason. There's lots of reasons. There's reasons and excuses from here to kingdom come. But the truth is, if we were flooding the courtrooms and flooding the news agencies and flooding the streets every time there was a cannabis case, we would make change. It's just that simple. We don't need to pass a law to make that change. You pass the law after you've made the change to reflect that change. We could do that. So let's see what Steve has to say, and we'll go on from there. Steve, you're live on the air. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today? Yes, I can hear you and your dog.
I have 7 puppies running around the house and barking, so it's...
Well, why don't you put the phone up close to... Why don't you put the phone up close to your mouth?
I'd like to explain a little bit about my case. The next court date is March 6th in Reading at the U.S. District Court there on Biscayne Lane. The case, I'm suing most of the top officials of Tehama County up here, which is notorious for abusing people's rights and being brazen about it. You know, they don't even hide the fact that they just do whatever they want and they can get away with it. Totally unaccountable for their actions. So anyway, I live... Oh my God. Hold on a second. Hold on. Stop it. Stop it. Now get out of here.
Because dogs understand English.
Okay, sorry about that.
No worries.
The puppies were rioting, but anyway, okay, so...
They're showing us how to protest.
Yep, make some noise.
Carry on.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I do still hear you.
I lived for 8 years and 8 months in Rancho Tehama, first of all, which recently was the scene of those, or that mass shooting. And that, as well as my case, is the result of just total negligence and maliciousness by the Tehama County good old boys and girls. So anyway, it's a very long, complicated story, but I had some bad neighbors out there who conspired to have me framed 2 or 3 times. The last time was over a medical marijuana abatement, and I was singled out of my neighborhood of over 30 grows, all of them in the open. You know, I mean, this was not, some of them had fences, but I mean, you could see over the fences or through, you know, so anyway, I was singled out for abatement in 2014. I was the only one in the whole neighborhood of over 100 homes, you know, at least 30 grows. Some of them big, you know. And so then I got to watch everybody else finish their grows and harvest that year, and I couldn't do anything. I had tenants, too, who were also growing, and on a relatively small scale. You know, this was nothing big. But anyway, we were singled out. My tenants were not cited. I was the only one abated or my name was the only one on the abatement notice. So I decided to ask for a hearing to try to get a variance. I was in the country. My grow was surrounded by fields, and there was no reason why I couldn't grow, except that this county has tried to de facto ban outdoor growing and make indoor growing so expensive that it's prohibitive, So anyway, I even called the county once or twice and said, hey, look, there's a lot of other goats. Why aren't you abating anyone else? They knew full well, they had photographs from the air. They had code enforcement officers driving around. They knew damn well what was going on, but they didn't care. They just wanted to get me that year, see, because of the previous problems that I had, being framed twice by the neighbors and then fighting both of those, blowing the whistle, writing newspaper articles, generally giving back as good or better than I got, really honestly, in the end. And so they, at the hearing before the Board of Supervisors, who were totally unreasonable and inflexible, and they actually sent somebody out 4 days before the hearing to photograph my property just to see if I had complied. I got the earliest hearing date that I could, but we didn't want to pull all our plants out because we put so much work into it. This was early May, and the tenants, for example, had hauled in soil and everything else. And, this was I didn't want to just, pull everything out if we could get a variance. So the board fined me at the hearing. They refused my variance and fined me $2,000 retroactively, $500 a day, for not having abated before the hearing. So I was fined $2,000 basically for requesting a hearing. And so fortunately at the hearing, I was bewildered. I didn't know what was going on, but there was Donna Will there, who is an activist up here, who sort of took me under her wing and told me what was going on, and all the other people who were being completely messed with, excessive fines, brutal treatment.
Who is an activist up here, who sort of took me under her wing and told me
they'll come onto your property without a search warrant. They'll cut down all your plants. You've heard these stories probably too. So anyway, I fought the fine. They tried to get it up to $7,000 by waiting 13 days to come out to check that I had complied. And I abated the same day as the hearing to make sure there were no more problems. But so they tried with, I'll use the phrase, an evil eye and an uneven hand to rack the fine up to $7,000. So I fought that tooth and nail and finally got them to, threatening lawsuits and, all sorts of things. Finally got them to go back down to $2,000. And so they gave me 90 days to pay or file a writ of mandate, which I had no idea what that was when I got it. And I found out it's a lawsuit in court. They didn't specify which court. And through some friends, notably Curtis Keaton and his mother, Jeanette Pringle, who at one point founded the Reading chapter of the Human Solution before it dissolved. But anyway, he he was very knowledgeable, and she was too, and they helped me put together a basic writ, you know, based on one that she had used in one of her cases, which had been written by a lawyer. So I'm suing pro se, which means representing myself, which is terrifying, believe me. And so the fee waiver took 3 years, over 3 years to be approved. It was finally approved last January. So then we had to serve the defendants. There were 13 defendants, the Board of Supervisors, the sheriff, the county council, you know, all the big wigs. And we finally got that done with difficulty and much trial and error. But so we did that. When you're suing pro se, the rules are more flexible. And so anyway, we got the first court date was June 6th of last year. We went to court. It seemed favorable. The judge seemed to think I had a case. I had two friends there with me, Jason Brown of Brown versus County of Tehama. If you know that case, it was a landmark case, the first case to give local governments the right to restrict medical marijuana grows and cause absolute devastation throughout the state. The local officials took that to mean they could do whatever they want. And so they started, you know, just going wild, completely going wild. And discriminating, we did a spreadsheet of all the medical marijuana citations for 2014 and 15. In this county, it turned out that over 50% were of Hispanic and Asians, and almost 50% were in Rancho Tehama. See, because they hate Rancho Tehama. So,
hey, Steve.
See what's going on.
Steve, can I get you to kind of hit this in bullet points? We're gobbling up a bunch of time, and I know you have a compelling story, but
I'm getting to it.
Yeah. Let's try to drive it home.
So anyway, the first judge said in court he thought we had a case. Then 3 months later, he dismissed all the 4 claims that he saw, which were equal treatment, due process, excessive fines, and state law. So I appealed that, and the district judge reviewed the case and gave me the right to amend 2 of the claims, excessive fines and state law. But somebody told me that I could amend all of them, which I did. So I wrote a 17 or 18-page amended writ and sent that in. The defendants, the county, that is to say, have their own taxpayer-funded law firm. So, you know, it's David versus Goliath here, you know. So they very diligently and very lawyerly opposed that. And so I opposed their document, and so we have the court date next week in Reading. So I'm trying to get some sincere people, some true believers for a court support for this case. I just wanted to very briefly explain what it was all about, you know, and give people some background so they understand where all this is coming from. But so that's about it. I mean, I would like to add this. You know, I'd like to hear from anybody who would like to come.
I would like to add this, Steve. Over the last almost 10 years, over the last 7 years for sure, we have supported more people from Sacramento to the Oregon border than probably anywhere else in the country. And we've supported dozens of people. I've personally been up there for numerous cases and numerous events. And I would like to sort of I know there's been a lot of crazy actions and bad blood and egos and problems of every kind, but I'd like to maybe petition all the folks up there, anybody north of Fresno, for God's sake. And I understand we have some support. Our Central California chapter is committing to come out there and be up there. So, you know, if we can have our folks from Central California come up, certainly some of the people that we've dedicated so much time and energy supporting can be there. This is a win-win situation, folks. This is a situation where we're taking it to them instead of us fighting for our own freedom. So I'm going to personally encourage and advocate that anybody who's possibly able to participate in that. And I know that you've talked to Becca. We're going to get your date on the calendar, but we're running out of time. And I was talking earlier, you know, we're our own worst enemy. We always wait to the last second to get this stuff out there, but we do what we can, and we'll do the best we can to get the word out there. And Steve, why don't you do this? Take the last minute of this conversation to let everybody know how can they get a hold of you if they're interested in helping.
Okay. My phone number is 530-576-3072.
Excellent.
My email
Keep going.
is my name, Stephen Raley, spelled STEPHEN RALEY 41, that's 41 at gmail.com. So to repeat, 530-576-3072, Stephen Raley 41 at gmail.com. Spelled STEPHEN RALEY 41 at gmail.
Excellent. Well,
Okay.
Stephen, I appreciate you calling. And no matter what, please call back and let us know how this happens, what happens with it. And feel free to, you know, share this call to action on any of the Human Solution pages or my public figure page. You know, you have the full weight of the Human Solution International to support you. We do support you. And I encourage anybody who is either a member or just supports this action to please come on out there. There's nothing like sitting in court. If you've never done it before, it's a life-changing experience. Court is not what you think, generally speaking, unless you've sat in there plenty of times. So let's be part of this, folks.
This probably won't take more than 2 hours. You know, that was about what it took the last time. So it's not like it's all day long. You know, this will be fairly quick. But this could be a very important case, civil rights case, which could hopefully put the local authorities on notice that they are accountable for their actions, you know, and they're not above the law. You know, like their attorneys are saying they have official immunity for anything they do. So that just gives you some idea of what we're up against. It's not a level playing field. You know, they have a whole law firm defending them, and I'm representing myself with help from friends, but, you know, can't even get a lawyer. The lawyers have been just appallingly dishonest and greedy and terrible to work with. And that's our main problem, I think, is that we can't get these guys to give their time to help the people out. They just want money, and lots of it. For example, the Mike Harris versus City of Fontana case was won by the ACLU, and they got a bill for $250,000.
No, I totally understand, and Steve, I got to get moving on. I've got other guests I got to get to, but I appreciate your.
Thanks again, Joe. Thanks again.
You bet.
And thank everybody. Your support is much appreciated.
You got it. Let us know how it goes, and if you can, folks, get on out there. All right, up next we have Elazar David Melendez, and you know what we're getting more and more is people finally deciding to step into the political arena. And as much as I'm not a big fan of the political swamp that we have allowed to exist. It's a reality. And we live in this world where it seems that everything is about political gain and power grabbing and maintaining power. And the real issues have, in my opinion, kind of faded away into nothing. And I've watched time and again how eager, good-hearted people have stepped into the political arena and either gotten beat back into submission, taken out, assaulted through media campaigns or worse, or just drank the Kool-Aid and turned into them. We need to get people to stand up, and we just need to keep coming forward. There's so many of us and so few of them, and yet they keep dominating our world and kicking our asses, and we keep allowing it. And we don't do anything about it. We just sit there and say, oh, we complain. That's what we do. We complain. We're a nation of bitches. And it's the truth. We just sit there and bitch. And what do? What do we actually do about it? Well, Eleazar's decided to do something about it, and he's running for city commissioner in Miami. And he's going to tell us a little bit about what's going on in Miami, and let's see what's going on. So I thank you for being so patient with us, Eleazar, and you come highly recommended. And welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thank you. I'm doing great. Thanks for that awesome intro and for having me on the show. And you're absolutely right with what you said. It is unfortunately a swamp at every level. Someone in my campaign had a really interesting analogy the other day, saying that we're really going to run a grassroots campaign, but that the grass that we're heading into is 6-foot-tall sawgrass with crocodiles. That's pretty much like what we're looking at.
Yeah.
And it's tough, but the bottom line is if we don't have people that have a mind on their shoulders and a head on their shoulders and a mind on their head and know right from wrong, then we're just going to keep getting represented by the same crooks and liars, basically. So someone's got to do it. Yeah, and I'm someone that has a history of just kind of jumping into the fire, going where things are needed. So I figured let's take this crazy adventure and see where we go.
Well, I think that's great, and I want to expound on that a little bit. I think one of the things that happens is people are afraid to take the first step, but oftentimes they'll take the second step or they'll follow somebody who's taken it. So as much as, I absolutely applaud your actions and I support you 100% of jumping into that. I'm guilty of the same thing. Pioneers are pioneers, but one of the things that happens is when you do that, you make it that much easier for the next person to come in and take that chance. When they see that you did it and it worked out okay for you, a lot of times that second one to come behind you is even easier. And there's so many elected positions that need to be filled by better people. And so I think that, I'm watching our organization rise up, and we're engaging leadership, and we're coming forward as experts and people willing to teach and people willing to put our support behind the good people doing good work. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this? Your bio is pretty impressive, and I know you were working with Bobby over in Puerto Rico with the hurricane work. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your history and what brought you to this?
Absolutely. So this is about the fifth career I've started in a few years since I've been doing a few things. I used to work my first job actually was in Wall Street. I graduated college right in the middle of the worst of the recession in 2008. And thank God had a job, had something that I could do that could pay the bills, could pay my college loans and help my family back home in Puerto Rico. So I took a job in Wall Street right out of college, And it was pretty interesting because I wasn't expecting to do that, honestly. And once I was in there, I was doing this so I would be employed, but I saw a lot of the abuses that went on there with just, especially around the foreclosure crisis, with these banks and all these developments were exposed later in terms of how everyone was robo-signing foreclosures and the courts were becoming kind of foreclosure mills and so on and so forth. I saw that, I saw that working in Wall Street, and I saw some of that stuff happening behind closed doors. After a few years, it's basically when I could afford to, and when I didn't have college loans to pay off as much, and when I felt that it was the right time, I went off and I became a reporter. I became a journalist, and I wrote about finance, right? I started writing about what I knew, and wrote a lot about these issues that I had seen, worked in a few places, worked in the Huffington Post for a little bit, wrote some freelance stuff for various financial publications, including the Wall Street Journal in New York. Did that for a while, and then came down to Miami. Actually, I came down here because I got bit by the journalism bug, and I wanted to become a foreign correspondent, go travel to Colombia, Argentina, Mexico, write about some of the stuff that was going on there. I actually stuck it out here because it's kind of incredible how Miami is really an island off the coast of South America, right? You don't really have to go further to be basically 100% in-depth into Latin American culture. And I figured this was the best option. And I've been involved here in kind of a mixed mash of journalism, activism, politics, and so on and so forth, where I went from being a journalist to being an activist on a lot of the issues that are reported here, including civil rights issues, worked for elected officials in both their official side, helping them write policy, and with their campaigns, helping them communicate a message about what the important things are. And basically just did that for a few years, most notably last cycle, coming up here in 2018, I was working for various campaigns on the Democratic side of the ticket, including Senator Bill Nelson, who unfortunately lost by a very, very small margin. And again, just kept going on a bunch of different things in terms of doing journalism, activism, and politics. And then November of last year happened. We had a lot of the people I was working with didn't win, so I was a little bummed out. And I figured, what am I going to do now, and what should I jump on next? And there were options. I could have jumped in one of the 18 or 20 million presidential campaigns that seem to be popping up on the Democratic side of the ledger. I could have worked on a constitutional initiative, right? There seems there's going to be a constitutional initiative this year, on the 2020 cycle in Florida for a living wage, so I could have worked that. But I also looked out my window. I looked out of the place where I had been working the campaign as the home base, talking to people, seeing the conditions of the neighborhood, and I said, no, change begins at home. Change begins in your backyard. So I decided to run for city commissioner, which is the lowest level of government, but still, particularly in Miami, a pretty powerful one. Miami is a city of almost 500,000 people, and there's only 5 commissioners, or I guess they'd be called councilmen in other places. So you do represent a significant constituency, right? Almost over 100,000 people, almost 100,000 people. And there's a lot happening because Miami is growing so fast, and development is occurring where there is a chance to shape how that happens so that it takes into account a lot of the big challenges that we need to think for in a forward-looking way, including how our city is going to survive the existential threat of sea level rise and climate change, right? And how, as Miami becomes more and more developed, we're going to tackle the issues of housing affordability and gentrification, which are popping up, perhaps not as badly as, say, places like Southern California or the Northeast of the United States, but are still significant issues. And just try to work to make life better for people. The district that I'm looking to represent is quite poor. It actually has one of the highest one of the census tracts has one of the highest amount of food stamp recipients in all the state of Florida, so it's quite poor. But people are proud. People are very much very happy to have come to this country. It's a very immigrant district, so have come to this country and been able to accomplish something, even if they don't have the wild success that maybe they dreamed of 30, 20 years ago when they first got here, that they were able to pick themselves up and work hard and become something of themselves. And they've been forgotten a little bit by a lot of the system and a lot of the things that are moving forward. So I'm looking to, number one, just activate people and carry a positive message that we deserve better than what we've been getting for a while. And people should be made aware of that. I think it's a pretty commonly understood phenomenon in social science and political science that when people live in an area that's poor, that's not thriving, that's economically depressed, right, as the district that I'm looking to represent this, they kind of just get used to it, and they get on with their lives, and they have to fight their own battles, and they have to put food on their table every day. So they don't really demand, but they don't really feel like they're entitled to much, right? And a lot of what my campaign is doing is fighting that mentality and being like, we are all residents of the city. We are all entitled to be treated the same and to get the basic services that we need and to be paid attention to, right? Which is very, very important. And then look forward to basically taking that and building a base of leaders that can help me once I'm elected commissioner move forward and really take the district and the city to where it's got to be. That's basically it. It's a question of basically going and energizing people, inspiring them, making sure that they understand that just because you might not have been paid attention or you might not have been given rights in the past, that doesn't mean that you don't have them. That means that you just haven't asked for them. And that's very important for me to push forward.
Well, let's get into that for a second. I have an obvious question that I'm going to bring to the table. What are your thoughts on cannabis prohibition? And I know that Florida has passed some sort of laws, but generally speaking, all the laws that have been passed fall way short of actually allowing the people to have access to this plant as they need and as they see fit. It's usually extremely regulated, extremely controlled, and extremely limited and extremely taxed. So what are your thoughts on that, and what are you prepared to do?
So I'll answer the question of what I'm going to do first, and then I'll do a little recap of where the state is, of the status of the state, because I know that a lot of your listeners are probably going to know this already. So I am fully supportive, first of all, in moving forward with what we have right now in the Constitution and making it so that patients can get access to their medicine in terms of medical marijuana. And then once that's done, moving beyond that to basically ending prohibition, because that's the wave of the future. That's what states are doing all over the country. And we have to get into the mindset of how we're going to work that and make that happen in a way that's equitable and doesn't repeat a lot of the mistakes that a lot of other states have done and a lot of other cities have done. So let me, now that I've told you my position, recap where we are. As you mentioned, the state of Florida has been just really weird about implementing, well, not even decriminalization or ending prohibition, but even the medical marijuana allowances that have been voted by over 60% of the people in the state of Florida into the state constitution, right? We're not talking about a law that was passed narrowly or like something that moved here and there. It was a vote of the people of the state of Florida, and they voted overwhelmingly to have medical marijuana. And yet the state legislature has decided that they're not going to respect the will of the people, right? They're going to make it extremely difficult to have the plant in plant form, right? They're only allowing it through certain extremely regulated companies and only in not in smokable form, which is insane. That's definitely not what people voted for. And they're playing games, quite honestly. Even people that claim to be libertarians or claim to be for freedom are saying, well, what do we get if we allow it to be smokable, and how do we make sure that our people get taken care of and the our campaign donors can make money out of this, which is a big problem, as you've seen in throughout the country in states that move forward on this. There's a lot of people just trying to restrict it to make money rather than to take care of the people that voted to make it move forward. So that's on the medical marijuana side at the state level. In the city level, it's quite shocking and outrageous because the city of Miami has taken an unusual position that they are simply not going to zone for marijuana dispensaries at all, right? Which is against the state constitution now that the citizens have voted to amend it to allow medical marijuana, and obviously very regressive and just kind of embarrassing. The city attorney who is pushing against this went on the record making an argument, and believe it or not, this is not me saying this. This is like the ridiculous argument that they made, that because marijuana was still, in their words, illegal at the federal level, if the city of Miami were to zone and allow for medical marijuana facility or a retail facility to open that sold marijuana, that it would be akin to the city allowing for a pedophilia center, right? People to come and have children. That is something that came out of the mouth.
Wow.
Which kind of makes you wonder how they got their bar license, but there it is. It's just such a regressive and ridiculous reefer madness kind of argument that you wonder what the hell is going through their mind, but that's what they said. And it's unique, that the city of Miami has a unique distinction of being the only city that's taken this stance in the entire state of Florida, right? There's other cities that have done moratoriums, basically saying, we don't know how putting up a retail center for cannabis is going to affect our city, so we need to study it and whatnot, which is allowed to a certain level, right? You can't use it as a delay tactic, but you can study it and whatnot. But the position of the city has been insane, and that is something that I definitely want some city commissioners just basically take a vote to say, no, we cannot allow this embarrassing view to stand, and we're going to move forward and zone and allow retail shops to occur. My district happens to have in one corner of it kind of the research triangle of some of the trauma, level 1 trauma center hospitals and research hospitals. So it's really shameful that we have, these hospitals that are used as not just to treat people across all of South Florida, but even internationally, right? And yet we don't have, they might not have access to their medicine within the city of Miami because of this crazy position that the city attorney has taken. Beyond that, the ending prohibition itself will be a state matter, but I think that the city should definitely support it symbolically in whatever way they can, because it's going to be a significant boon to our city and what is a place that could use the economic boost, and because it's the right thing to do. Now, what's going to be interesting is being able to take that conversation to the level that it is in places like New York, in places like California, where it's like, okay, now that we're moving towards ending prohibition or have moved towards ending prohibition, how do we do it in a way that, for example, takes into account the fact that certain socioeconomic groups and racial groups have been completely targeted and affected by the drug war, and to make sure that they're not left behind and victimized once more by prohibition ending, right? It's interesting. I mentioned I was a reporter working on certain financial issues a few years ago. One of the things I looked into and did a deep dive around 2011, when places like Arizona and Massachusetts were looking at beginning a license system for medical marijuana. It's just how they were so regulated and so taxed that it was increasingly becoming the business domain of the 1%, right? You literally needed to put down hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in, which I'm sure your listeners know a lot about this. I don't want to go too deep into it, but you just need to put so much money to start a cannabis business just a barrier to entry that the government was forcing. That meant that only extremely wealthy people, and sometimes people that had no interest in what the product was, were in the business, which is insane. It's not a good way to visualize this kind of stuff. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, I think that I don't know that there's going to be anyone that will be able to get elected in the next 10 or 20 years at the local level once people start seeing how much of a economic boom this is and how much this is the right thing to do, that we'll be able to take any other position than this, hopefully. But again, it's kind of chicken or the egg. You need to have people push for that so that people can see the positive effect that this has, so that that becomes kind of the common sense thing to see.
Well, I appreciate your point of view, and I hope that you get the opportunity to step into that arena, and if you do, and you want help to create language that will be clear and decisive, I have that language, and I'm more than willing to help. There are ways to do this, and unfortunately, it takes more common sense than political sense. It takes courage rather than the ability to, take advantage of a political wave. And if we can find enough people that are willing to step up and demonstrate those things, it can be done. And my organization, the Human Solution International, is dedicated to staying in this until we're done. And so, until we have a world where this plant is no longer a criminal act, there will be people out there advocating to change those things. How are you running your campaign? How are you getting? I see that you got a link on here to donate. So why don't you put out your contact information if somebody wants to help out, if somebody wants to donate time, if there's anybody in Florida and the Miami area that wants to participate with your campaign, or I'm sure you can accept donations. Tell us how we can do it.
Absolutely. So my campaign website is my last name, Melendez, MELENDEZ for Miami. So that's MELENDEZ for Miami.com. Basically, we are taking donations there. Every little bit helps. This is going to be unfortunately, a very expensive race. I'm budgeting something like at least $150,000 and probably maybe closer to $250,000 for this race. So with donations of everything from 5, 10, 50, 200, we're kind of coupling together the stack to make sure that this happens. So we have an AdGlue link on the website, and that can help. And if you want to help with policy advice, I'll take that. If you want to help with coming out and volunteer, if you're in the Miami area, there's also places you can sign up to do that. Quite honestly, anything helps in terms of getting the message around and making sure that people understand that there is someone running in local office, that there is a crazy situation in the city of Miami that's unlike anywhere else in the state of Florida, with a city attorney just taking a very regressive view that I don't know. It's kind of embarrassing to say like how crazy it is, but it is there. And that there is someone that is talking about it and is going to be there on day one to push against that, because that's needed. So again, the website is Melendez, MELENDEZ for Miami.com. And the end of the second fundraising period is actually tomorrow. We have to report every end of the month, and the more that we can get in there before then, the more we can show people that we have power and strength in numbers, and off we go.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, and I'd like to see anybody who's willing to step into the ring and start swinging, and feel free to come back as you're getting closer to your campaign, really getting into it, to come and give us updates.
Awesome. If someone, I was thinking about it as I was talking to it. One cool thing would be we can get a T-shirt or a sticker going on, kind of the 1990s style skateboarding is not a crime stickers, but something like smoking cannabis is not pedophilia. That would really drive the message across.
I like it. I like it a lot.
Thanks for everything.
All right. Thank you very much, Elazar, and I appreciate you coming on. All right, folks. Elazar David Melendez running for city commissioner of Miami. And, you know, he had a lot of good things to say. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but more and more, we're having more and more people stepping up into political office. And we're a 501c3, so we can't endorse specifically candidates, but we can certainly give them a voice, and we can educate people about their options and about the process and all those things. So we're well within our rights to do that. And, you know, we're here to support us. We're here to support our rights and freedoms, and that's what this is about. Anybody have any questions about what the Human Solution's about? Please pay attention, because we're talking about it. It shouldn't be hard to get that elevator pitch today. All right, so we got some updates, and as I said, I had a bit of a wake-up call, and I'm trying to refine my efforts and make them a little more focused and a little bit more pointed. And so I'm not so much looking for 100,000 people to come and raise their hands and then not do anything. I'm looking for 1 or 2 people to tap me on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm serious, let's do this, and actually step into the ring and have some ideas and be willing to do what you say. I am so fucking sick of people telling me what I should do and what they're going to do, and they're just talking and talking and talking and not doing anything. There's always been a very small handful of people that have actually gotten the work done. And all day long, every day, wherever we are, whatever place we're at, it's just a couple of people really getting in and getting it done. And I can't help but think, what would it be like if we had a couple more and a couple more and a couple more people that were just actually dedicated, not just to sitting here listening and smoking and smiling and talking and all that's great. That's the freedom. That's the freedom that you're taking, whether it's ours or not. Good job. Take it. If everybody took it, we would have it. But we got enough people that aren't taking it, that aren't willing to stand up, and they're not. Because of that, we don't really have it. We could lose it at any second for any reason. And we keep having over and over historically, example after example after example. Doesn't necessarily matter what the law says. And like Elazar was talking about, in California especially, the only people that are really legal to do any of this are the people that have so much money they don't need to do it anyways. Most of the people that are grassroots people just trying to do a little mom and pop shop of whatever reason, whatever way, they're not legal entirely. They can't afford to be. So they're always taking a chance on some level or another. And yeah, we've made some progress because the stakes are a little bit lower and they're not gunning for felony cases like they used to be in the same veracity as they used to. But nonetheless, they could and they can. And so, you know, this past year, especially since our last election, we've been pushing to build this A-team. And I'm really actually proud of the team that's been growing. You know, we've got our Central California chapter that's stepping up, and they're committed. They're small but committed. We got Kansas tearing it up. I am so proud of Kansas right now. This little teeny chapter, but man, these guys are just rocking it. And it just takes every single one of us that's here. You know, Chris, I'm trying. That's what I want to hear. I'm trying. Freaking try. You know, I mean, I'm pardon my French today, but I mean, you know, if you guys could see how many hundreds of hours I spent talking on the phone and going into meetings and hearing people's stories, and then only to find out at the end, nobody did anything. I'm kind of like, wow, what if I could have that time back? Wouldn't that be nice? What I could do with it, you know? So I'm thinking to myself, maybe if enough of us are actually trying, and yeah, you guys are rocking it. We got Peggy and Glenn in Ohio fighting their own case, fighting for their own health and freedom, and they're still out there doing it. We got Pete and Helen up in New York. You know, we got these little spots. We got the headquarters chapter down in SoCal. We got Tom Corby and the NorCal folks. Hopefully we can, you know, get some support for Steve Rayleigh's case. And there's, you know, not the same amount of cases and not the same kinds of cases, but the work is here. and there's a lot to be done. And if we could put our differences aside and decide to get together and you know, really put some, not just have another meeting, not just keep talking about stuff, but actually let's set a plan and do it. Because I got plans and we're doing it. There's some of us are. And I'm encouraging you. I'm imploring you. I'm asking. I'm begging. I'm well, not so much bribing anymore. Really, those days are kind of old. But I'm encouraging in every possible way. I'll do what it can to make it happen if you're willing. So anybody who knows me knows that that's entirely true. So what are we doing right now? Well, we're working on the website, and the website is it's a real tool. It's not Facebook. It's not prone to all the pitfalls that Facebook is, but it has its own pitfalls because it's not social media and because not everybody is connected to it, because you can't get likes and you can't stroke yourself and give yourself selfies on it. It doesn't get the same attention. But what it does is it has some real resources for real people getting together to do the real work. And it's growing and it's getting better all the time. So I want to talk about a few points on the website right now. We've been blessed to have a number of sponsors that have, you know, donated to the Human Solution. And what I don't have is all of your contact information. So if you've sponsored the Human Solution, given a $50 or $100 or more donation to the Human Solution, you're entitled to a mention on our sponsor page. And please give us your information. Most of the sponsors on there right now have not donated to us. I don't even know why half of them are there. I mean, they support us, but they're not actual sponsors. So let's turn this around and actually have real sponsors on this. There are some, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, we're a team. And if you've been listening, you're noticing that more and more organizations are standing together. We've got that Matt from 2 weeks ago, the Veterans Organization, we've met. We're going to work together. We're finally going to be doing some veterans work. I'm excited about that. And more other civil rights organizations are stepping up and are willing to lock arms and say, you know what, let's stand together. We're stronger together. And, you know, when you look at historically when things changed, it took people with a plan and a willingness. And not everybody that fought in the civil rights movement, not everybody that fought in the suffragette movement, the alcohol prohibition movement, the anti-war movements, all the different movements that we've had liked each other. You know, the gay marriage movement, that was a huge step forward. You think all those guys and women liked each other? No, but it was important enough to get it done. And they make us look bad every day. Every single day I go, wow, you know, I wish I had something to do with that, because I didn't fight for that. It wasn't my thing. And I watch how well they did, and they knocked it out of the park, and we're still sitting here holding our dicks. It's just kind of like, you know, when are we going to want it bad enough? When are we going to want it bad enough? And I think now is a perfect time. I think now is a perfect time. So a couple of things, and I brought this up before, so I'm going back to a couple of things that we started. Messaging, education, and support is a big part of what we do. And little things. Somebody came up with the idea of a bumper sticker. We've had bumper stickers in the past, but I'm going to say this once on the radio today. If you go onto our website, not everything works right. We're working on it, but the contact us page does. And you go to About THSI and you scroll down to Contact, and there's a contact. And there's also an email that you can just send a straight email to, thehumansolutioninternational@gmail.com. Go figure. It works. If you send an idea for a bumper sticker, a graphic, or even just a concept, let's get it together. I'm officially announcing a contest. I'm going to put together a nice package for the winner, but I'm not going to mention it anywhere else, just here right now this one time. So let's see what happens. Next up, this is in my opinion, maybe one of the most exciting things we've had in a while. For the past 3 years, I've been reaching out, trying to get people to submit footage and videos and stills. And, we have a 10-year history, and we've been all around the world. We've been all over the country. We've been in court. Yeah. Another one. We've been all over the place. We've done so many amazing things. And if you go to our website or you go to our Facebook pages, you'd never know it. We've got videos here and there, and they're spread out so much, and there's so much content that it's not organized. It's all raw. And I finally have somebody with experience that's willing to put together a documentary feature out of our content that we have. And we have enough content to do a really good job. But we need to pull it together. So I'm going to just put it out there. We've been featured in a number of documentaries, but we never did our own. We never did the story of the human solution. And I think if we did that and we took it to a final message, Dee Dee Kirkwood took her play and she made it into a movie. And at the very end of her movie, that she gives us a mention. And I think to myself, if we could take that even yet another step and show where we've been, who we are, what we've done, and who we are today and where we're going, and have it be a call to action, I think it could be powerful. I think it might be the thing that could be the blasting cap that sets this thing off to finish the job. I'm confident that we are part of the solution, the end of prohibition. We are elemental in that. And we've done enough work around the world. People know us and recognize us for who we are, the core, the lack of bullshit, really. We've never wavered in 10 years. We've always done what we said. We've kept driving forward even when we were only a few deep, or when we were thousands deep. We haven't changed. We haven't wavered, and we're not going to. We're going to continue on until we get this thing done. And I think this is important. So if you have any footage, still shots, video, going all the way back, anything that the Human Solution's ever been involved in or with, please get it to us. You can either put it onto the website, like I just mentioned, thsintl.org, and you go to the contact button, which we're going to have a direct button on the front page instead of being on a drop down real soon, because I know Becca's listening because she's screening today. So I think that'll happen probably maybe even by tomorrow. I know there's some people that have a lot of footage, and if you know any of those people, Laura, I know you got footage because I know you published some of it, so I want your stuff. And Stephen Maria Green, I don't know if any of you have been in contact with them recently. They're from Michigan, but we supported their case ardently for a while, and they ended up being victorious. And at one point we had, 5 or 6 chapters in Michigan. But, things happen, whatever. But meanwhile, I know that there's a lot of good footage from work that we've done in Michigan. So if anybody knows any of the Michiganders, anybody knows Stephen Maria Green, if you can reach out. I have reached out. I've been told we're going to get stuff, but nothing ever came. Also, there's a guy named Sam Sabzahar in Orange County, or that's where he was. Same thing. He shot a ton of footage during my trial and in some of the other work we did. And I was told I could get it, but never got it. Jessica Lux is another one who shot a ton of footage. And I haven't talked to her in a long time. So those are 3 people I know that have a ton of footage. I have a lot of Steve Baker's footage already. So hopefully that's still in our Flickr account. But meanwhile, I think that's a huge thing. I think it's a huge opportunity. I think it's part of our future, and it's something that I'm going to start spending quite a bit of time on. So I'm encouraging you, if you have ever been involved with the Human Solution, or you've ever been to an event or in any way been touched by it and you have some footage, please include it so we can tell an accurate historical story about this amazing organization. And I've been part of a lot of organizations, and in a lot of different ways, nonprofits, churches, spiritual groups, scientists groups, doctors groups, every kind of thing I've been part of. I've never seen anything with this kind of heart. I haven't. Not that really has this kind of heart. So it's worthy of telling the story, folks. Worthy of telling the story. And Chris, I appreciate that. You know, it's my goal to be inspiring if I can. But I gain inspiration from you guys. You know, I mean, I got whatever. I'm a freak. Okay, I can't not fight for freedom. It's just what I got. But when I see you guys standing up, that's what lights my fire. That kicks in my afterburners. That gets me driven, and it gets me wanting to really take it home. Because, you know, it's one thing to care, it's one thing to fight, but you can give it this much. But when I see the others, people standing up going, yeah, you know what, I'm in, it lights a fire on me, and trust me, it brings out a beast. So, you know, let's bring the monsters home and let's make this happen. All right, we got 20 minutes left of the show, and George Martorano was going to call in, but it's late over there, and yes, we are going to finish this. So we're going to go to Tom Corby, and we're just going to wrap it up. I think I'm going to hold off on that little guided meditation right now. I'm kind of tired right now. I'm dealing with some shit, and I'm a little tired. All right, let's see what Tom Corby has to say. We'll do that next week for sure, though. Tom Corby, welcome to the show. How are you doing?
Thank you, Joe. Hanging in there. Most folks know that my daughter and I have both been in the hospital, and we want to thank everybody for all the support. I always want to thank all those on the front line, Joe and Mary, Becca, Lisa, coming together at Grand Prohibition. I want to thank you, Joe, again, for your awesome sales and products. I just see my battery kit blow up and plug it in. I hope I can make it.
You can do it.
She's due on Friday.
Woohoo!
We actually have a hard. Yeah, she's improved.
Good.
Literally, I have to thank you to your Sam's, your meds you're sending.
Anything I can do, man. You know that.
I'm having a little fever thing here. I'm gonna compliment actually Steve Rayleigh. Where have all the people gone? Steve Rayleigh actually back when, if you remember, Joe, 3 or 4 years ago, he did come to court support.
Yeah.
And he is doing the rest. He texted me this morning.
He wrote a song.
I get my breath here. He texted me this morning, wanted to mention coming for court support. I did tell him that. Got to get my breath here. I did tell him that we have to have priorities, and like he understood.
Take a minute.
I think up and staff this off. I want to stress right here that we always say that we have to save court support for priorities, and I don't have a plug in. My phone's almost on here. And he did file the injunction lawsuit. That's what the hearing's about. Also, I want to say right here, when we talk about people coming for me, the court support, and Gordy Dice, of course, you know who Gordy Dice is up in Paradise. He got burned out in the fire, and we're going for his celebration of life this Saturday for Gordy Dice. So, great dance through the day. How's it going, Joe?
Hey, Frank, how's it going? Good to hear from you.
Me too. Things are going good.
That's what I like to hear.
I've been on it Friday at 11 a.m.
Woohoo!
And yesterday I got her a hospital bed, a chair for the shower.
Nice.
I got her a steel bowl today. And then we want to thank Tova Love. She also her home. She's Rocky Flowers' mom, Alex Lyons. He's listening today. She's moved in here with her trailer. She's going to help Frank with Donna downstairs. You know that, Joe?
Oh, good.
She also got all this hospital equipment for us.
Yeah.
We want to thank Tova. Also, all their support. Dr. David Allen. He's on the road back to Mississippi. He's going to try to go back and save his property there in Mississippi.
Wow.
So we talk about don't forget to breathe, Tom.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Thank you all today. And Frank and Ann, without Frank, I don't know what we do here. And come join us and help you the solution and prohibition. And don't forget the grades. Thank you all today. Go.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. It looks like George is joining us here because I happen to recognize his phone number. So, Tom, I'll talk to you very soon. And we got George Martirano. For anybody who was with me last week, we did our show live from the Hip Hemp Cafe in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And George told us about his story and about the amazing well that's on his property and the cafe and the work we're doing. George, welcome to the show. How are you doing? Hello, George.
Yeah, I hear you. How you feeling?
I'm feeling better. I'm a little tired. I'm gonna knock off a couple minutes early today. I still kind of working through this one.
Okay, well, you're okay. I know you had a little accident. Every year you have an accident, Joe.
I know. February's not my day. Oh, shoot. I am so sorry. I got David Abel on too. David, we will get to you today. I apologize. I totally apologize. Yeah, George, last February, I fell out of a tree with the chainsaw in my hand, and I blew out my knees, and I was out for a couple of months. Now this, I just said, tomorrow's the last day of February, and I'll be glad to see it gone. We'll get into March.
Well, I want to say hi to my West Coast family, Liz out there, and everyone else, and Evie Kirkwood, and just so many out there. Very, very proud out there in San Diego area. Which I miss you all. It's top here. More articles are coming out about the Hip Hemp Cafe.
I love it.
But the popularity is good because the articles say we're helping others. We're helping so many others. Now, we had this major. We went viral. We went viral close to 4 times, and it's continuing. But it's the more popular my Hip Hemp Cafe is getting, the more people are coming out of the woodwork for help. You can't imagine how many. I mean, just so many ill people. So many. I'm so happy because when I first came home from prison, Philadelphia was obscure. Didn't know anything about CBDs, and now through my operation, Hip Hemp Cafe, my creation, so many people are getting help. And I'm so proud of that. So proud of that.
Well, it's an impressive place. I was fortunate enough to spend a couple of days there last week, and you guys have just done an amazing job, and you got a good, knowledgeable team. That was what impressed me maybe more than everything was, your team there knows the products, and they know about CBD, and they know, when people come in, they're compassionate. They're not just trying to upsell them on the latest next thing. They listen to them. They ask them what their condition is, and they're careful because, you got to be careful giving that kind of advice. But they, I was very impressed with what I saw. You guys are doing a great job out there.
Well, as I said, we're hoping to have more Hip Hemp Cafes. It's not about me. It's about helping others. Incidentally, ladies and gentlemen, Joe flew all the way in on the West Coast to consult and show us what we were doing right and what we need to do better. So, but not everyone that does that, ladies and gentlemen. Here's a guy that flew all the way in from the West Coast to our shop here in Philly, which we're helping many others. So
You know, once you understand what kind of guy is hosting the show, he's a good man. Very good man. I want to thank you, Joe, from the bottom of my heart.
Well, George, you're it's an honor to be your friend and your ally and your brother, and I'm just so tickled that this is starting to go and that you're getting that new start. That's what we talked about a year ago, and I'm so proud to see it happen.
Since we got all the publicity, what I like recently, we're getting a lot of professionals coming and really opening up their heart and their mind and their situation. We get a lot of professionals coming and saying they need TVDs in their life for this or that matter, which is important because, you know, these professionals have a lot of, especially if they're attorneys, they're doctors, they have people in their life that they have to care for. So you can't do that if you're not in the right situation. So I just want to share that. With so many professionals are coming now.
I love it. I love it. Well, you know, we're gaining on it. We got to just keep pushing and keep doing it right and keep doing it over and over. And as more people experience it, you just can't deny it anymore. We're bringing it out.
All right. So listen, we went a long way, me and you, Joe. I can imagine where we're going to be in another year.
I can't wait.
So I want to share that with everyone. I know you're short for time. Love everybody there on the West Coast.
All right. Thank you so much. George Martorano, folks. I will talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, George. All right. So I apologize. I got David Abel from Kansas. And David's been a guest on our show many, many times. And like I said, I'm a little loopy right now. I conked my head pretty good a couple of days ago, and I'm doing my best. Anyways, David, I apologize for looking right past you, but here you are. You got a few minutes left. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing better than your head.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I can promise you that.
I got some news today.
Okay.
I got some news today on the Veterans First bill that they're trying to sneak down here in Kansas. It's a bad bill. They're trying to use veterans to pass this bad bill. It has things in it like if your doctor don't approve and you have to switch doctors, you have to have a relationship with the new doctor for 2 years before he can recommend.
Oh, my God. What the hell is that? You know, you can get a major surgery on a moment's notice with the right recommendation. You can have an organ removed and replaced. And you're telling me you can't have a recommendation for one of the safest substances on the planet without a 2-year relationship? You tell me the sense in that.
There is no sense in that. I have cancer. It just came back recently. And I was in surgery on the 10th of January. Got out of the hospital on the 11th and was in Topeka, which is a 3-hour drive, on the 15th. And I'm doing this on a shoestring, so to speak. I only get $9.41 a month, and after I pay my bills, I don't have much left.
Wow.
So for people to tell me, I can't go, this, that, I don't have the money. Hey, there's rides out there. You can get a ride to your state capital to fight for this.
Yeah, there's always a way, and that's, you know what, David, that's part of what building this team is all about. You know, there's always people, there's every kind of person. You see, there's some people that have a little extra dough. There's some people that have a car. There's some people that have a little extra time, and there's some people, you know, that have certain talents. If everybody just came together and brought what they have, nobody'd be needing for anything. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do, is build this team where no matter where you are, no matter what you need, if it has to do with coming together to finish this job and end prohibition, I can say, sure, we got that. Why? Because we put it together. The right people came together and they're willing to do it.
I'm going to fight for ODO, the KSAA, Kansas Safe Access Act, that we've been 5 years working on to get it through. And they're going to try to sneak through this corporate piece of crap. That you had a gentleman on that's running for office down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pure corporate hooliganism. They have it set so only the rich, the people that's got a lot of money still get involved. And if they don't want you in it, they got so many bureaucratic functions in it, they can out you at any time. And it will be asking you for stuff. I think it's like $105,000.
Yeah, it's crazy. Oh yeah.
And you don't get your body back if they out you.
Right.
And they'll probably wait till you started low, and out you're doing the low, and not kill you since the cops will arrest you because they revoked your license.
Oh, I know. And you got people celebrating that as a victory. Oh, help. I mean it, help.
Somebody I know that's in the CBD market here in Kansas, who's sitting there dancing on the computer here, saying, hey, push this bill, it's going to be right. And I'm like, which bill did they do it? And he told me, oh my God, that's the worst bill.
Well, you know, it's gonna take some bold action from some bold people, and hopefully we can keep pushing and pushing and pushing. The good news is, David, and this is something that's been brought up a few times, is that the conversation, you know, Craig Cecil keeps bringing it up. One of the good things that's coming out of this is that the conversation isn't taboo anymore. You know, 20, 30, 50 years ago, if you want to talk about ending cannabis prohibition, you'd have to be in a pretty safe place to do that, because it wasn't a conversation people were having. And so now, you know, criminal justice reform. I don't know if I'd consider that a safe place where I stand, but maybe. Yeah, I hear you. Well, anyways, I appreciate you bringing attention to this lousy bill. And you know, it sickens me to see that veterans are being used to further really bad legislation, and people are falling for it. And I'm hoping, you know, in working with this new veterans group that we're working with, that we can bring attention, and that's part of their mission, is to bring awareness and attention. Let people know what they're celebrating, what's being brought out in their name, and what it means. You know, I think if people understood a little more about these details that you brought out, 2-year relationship with the doctor before you can get a recommendation. I mean, what possible sense is that? Who came up with that as a good idea, and why did one other person say that that's a good idea too? And why are we sitting here doing nothing about it? So I think that, you know, we're opening the discussion. We keep talking about it. We keep bringing it up when it happens. But we just need more. We need more people willing to get creative. And, you know, let's bring a real plan to action. What are we going to do about it? That's what I want to hear from you guys. What are we going to do about it? The problems are prevalent. Where's the solution? We're the solution. We are the human solution, and we're here to make the difference. We're here to make the change. And David, I appreciate everything you're doing, but
one last thing. I posted the 2 PDFs, the Kansas Safe Access Act and Veterans First Bills, and Lisa Woodbridge's feed on this.
Oh, good. Excellent. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's a great idea. And feel free, you can post those on my public figure page too if you want, and I'll make sure they stay up there for a little while. So I appreciate that you're taking the time and effort to fight this while you're busy fighting your own personal health issues. And you know what? I don't know why, I don't know how, but the people that are suffering the most, the people that have the least to give, generally speaking, are the ones that give the most. I just can't help but wonder, what would it be like if the ones that had more to give gave more? I just think we could kick its ass real easy. So thank you, David. I appreciate everything you're doing. And we're down to the short strokes of this, so I think we're going to wrap it up.
90 seconds.
All right. Thank you so much. David Abel from Kansas. And I am just so pleased and proud with all the good effort coming out of Kansas. And just remember, it's not going to be over until it's over. I'll paint that picture next week about what it'll look like when it's over. It's a good place. Imagine a world where you didn't have to be afraid. Imagine a world where you could look out your window and see thousands of plants and not have to be afraid. Imagine you could go to somebody's little shop and not have to worry about it getting raided. Imagine going to somebody who knew how to make medicine and not having to worry about losing it and having it available to you at a reasonable price. Imagine being able to afford it because it was all over the place and not having to worry about paying exorbitant taxes or all these ridiculous regulations. Imagine being able to drive around with it wherever you wanted to go. Imagine being able to take it wherever it needed to be. Imagine those things without the fear. I don't know. I think we can do it. All right, folks, that's it for the week. We'll come back next week. We're going to do it for an hour next week, and we'll see what happens. I've said that before, but Willie Nelson's got a thing or two to say, and we'll see you next week.
Willie Nelson and the Willie Nelson Tea Party and I endorse the Human Solution, supporting cannabis prisoners because no one should go to jail for a plant. The things I should have said, John, you were always on my mind. You were always on my mind.
Thank you for using Blog Talk Radio. Goodbye.